The dust tasted like old money. Part cedar shavings, part indifference, and a lingering metallic undercurrent of dry rot. It coated the back of Leo Vance's throat, a gritty paste that made the simple act of breathing feel like swallowing sandpaper. He was folded into a shape that human anatomy had never intended to support. His knees pressed against his chest. His spine curved into a painful question mark against the galvanized steel of the ventilation shaft. The space was no wider than a coffin and significantly less comfortable. Below him, through the slatted cast-iron grate that looked like it had been forged in the 19th century, the library of the Moretti estate sprawled in an obscene display of mahogany and leather. Leo didn't look like a spy. He looked like exactly what he was. A 34-year-old gig economy casualty, wearing a lime green vest with the logo flash drop peeling off the left breast. He smelled of rain, cold pizza, and the terrified sweat that was currently making his grip on his smartphone slick and treacherous. "Don't drop it," he screamed internally, his fingers trembling so violently the camera image on the screen vibrated. Asterisk, for the love of God. Leo, do not drop the phone. Through the grate, the scene below was theatrical in its composition. A fire crackled in a hearth large enough to roast a whole hog, casting long, dancing shadows against walls lined with books that had likely never been opened. Standing before the flames, silhouetted like a devil in a bespoke suit, was Vittorio the Vulture Moretti. Leo had seen Moretti on the news, usually walking out of courthouses with a smile that suggested he knew the jury's children's names. In person, he was smaller, denser. He possessed a gravitational pull of pure menace. Judge Calloway was a stubborn man, Moretti said. His voice was smooth, a baritone rumble that traveled effortlessly up the ductwork. He believed in the sanctity of the bench. He believed in the immutability of federal zoning laws. Admirable, really. Leo shifted his weight by a millimeter. The aluminum beneath him groaned, a high-pitched creak that sounded like a gunshot in the silence of the ducts. Below, Moretti paused. He tilted his head, listening. Leo stopped breathing. He bit his tongue hard enough to taste copper. Asterisk, please. Just be the wind. Just be the house settling. After an agonizing 5 seconds, Moretti turned back to the man sitting in the leather wingback chair. A man Leo couldn't see, only the polished tips of his shoes. But sanctity doesn't move product, and zoning laws don't build empires, Moretti continued, pouring a measure of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. So we removed the obstacle. It was cleaner than I expected. 2 shots, one to the chest, one to the head. In his driveway, just as he was reaching for his morning paper. It's almost poetic. The news is calling it a robbery gone wrong. I prefer to think of it as a corporate restructuring. Leo's thumb hovered over the record button on the screen. The red timer ticked upward. He had it. He actually had it. He had come here to deliver a priority black package, an off-the-books service flash drop offered to high-net-worth clients who wanted discretion. The package, a small, heavy box wrapped in brown paper, was sitting on a table in the foyer 3 floors down. But Leo, driven by a bladder that respected no schedule, had taken a wrong turn looking for a bathroom and ended up witnessing a heavy-set man with a holster dragging a body toward the cellar. Panic had driven Leo up a service ladder and into the walls. Now he was the fly on the wall of the century. This was the confession that the FBI, specifically that hard-nosed agent Sarah Thorne he kept reading about in the Post, had been chasing for years. The wire transfer is already complete, the unseen man in the chair said. His voice was shaky. I didn't know it would be Calloway. You paid for a solution, Moretti said, taking a sip of his drink. Do not bore me with your moral indigestion. Then it happened. The reality of Leo's life collided with the cinematic horror of his situation. His phone, the tool of his salvation, betrayed him. The screen flashed bright white, illuminating the dark shaft like a lightning strike. A cheerful, synthetic chime echoed through the metal tunnel, amplified by the acoustics of the ventilation system. Asterisk ping. Flash drop alert. New order nearby. Earn $4.50 now. The sound was impossibly loud. It wasn't just a noise. It was a death sentence set to a major scale. In the library, the world froze. Moretti looked up, his eyes locking instantly onto the vent grate. The casual elegance vanished, replaced by the coiled tension of a predator. Ceiling, Moretti barked, his voice snapping like a whip. Now! Leo didn't think. Evolution hijacked his brain. He scrambled backward, his rubber-soled sneakers squeaking against the metal. He shoved the phone into his pocket, jamming it deep, terrified the flashlight would give him away again. Get the boys! Moretti roared below. Seal the grounds. Someone's in the vents. Leo crab-walked backward, his elbows banging against the rivets. The shaft was a labyrinth of darkness and drafty currents. He had no map, no plan, just a primal urge to be anywhere else. He reached a junction, a T-intersection where the main HVAC trunk split. To the left, the hum of a heavy fan. To the right, silence. He went right. The metal beneath him vibrated as heavy doors slammed somewhere deep in the house. He could hear shouting now, muffled but rising in volume. The hunt was on. He crawled for what felt like miles but was likely only 50 feet. The shaft angled downward sharply. Leo slid, his vest riding up, the raw metal scraping the skin of his stomach. He tumbled down a slope, flailing, until his feet kicked out a weaker, plastic grate. He fell. For a second, he was weightless. Then gravity collected its debt. Leo crashed onto a surface of cold marble, landing on his shoulder with a bone-jarring thud. The wind was knocked out of him, leaving him gasping like a landed fish. He rolled, wheezing, trying to orient himself. He was in a hallway. Not just a hallway, a gallery. The walls were lined with oil paintings that probably cost more than Leo would earn in 10 lifetimes. A crystal chandelier overhead tinkled softly from the vibration of his impact. "He's in the East Wing," a voice shouted. Leo scrambled to his feet. His left ankle screamed in protest, a sharp, hot line of pain shooting up his calf, but the adrenaline acted as a messy anesthetic. He limped, then ran, his sneakers squeaking on the polished stone. He turned a corner and nearly collided with a statue of a Grecian woman holding a pitcher. He used the marble plinth to pivot, swinging himself around just as heavy footsteps thundered on the floorboards behind him. There! The green vest. Leo didn't look back. He sprinted toward a set of double oak doors at the end of the corridor. He hit them with his shoulder, bursting through into a massive kitchen that smelled of rosemary and bleach. A chef, dressed in pristine whites, dropped a copper pot. It clattered to the floor, spinning noisily. "Door!" Leo gasped, pointing vaguely ahead. "Where is the door?" The chef just stared, mouth agape at the sight of the disheveled, dust-covered delivery man. Leo saw it, a service exit next to a walk-in freezer. He lunged for it, slamming the push bar with his palms. The cool night air hit him like a physical blow. He was out, but he wasn't safe. The Moretti estate was a fortress. The service door opened onto a paved loading area, surrounded by high hedges that looked black in the night. The rain had started. A cold, miserable drizzle that turned the pavement into a mirror reflecting the floodlights that suddenly snapped on around the perimeter. "My van," Leo thought, his mind latching onto the image of his battered 2008 Ford series like a religious icon. Asterisk the rusty bucket. He had parked it around the side, near the tradesman's entrance, trying to be discreet. Now, that discretion meant he had to cross 50 yards of open ground. A crack echoed through the night, sharp, dry, and distinct. A chunk of brickwork exploded from the wall 6 inches from Leo's head, spraying him with red dust. Asterisk they are shooting at me. Asterisk the thought was so absurd it almost made him laugh. Asterisk I deliver falafel and phone chargers. People don't shoot the falafel guy. He ducked low, running in a zigzag pattern he'd seen in movies, which probably did nothing but make him look ridiculous. Another shot whined past his ear, sounding like an angry hornet. "Stop him. Don't let him reach the gate." Leo vaulted a low stone wall, landing in a bed of hydrangeas. The mud sucked at his shoes. He scrambled through the bushes, branches whipping his face, leaving stinging welts. He burst out onto the gravel driveway. There she was, the rusty bucket, The white paint was oxidized to a chalky gray. The rear bumper was held on by duct tape and hope, and the passenger side mirror was missing. It was the most beautiful thing Leo had ever seen. He fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped them. "No, no, no," he shrieked, dropping to his knees on the sharp gravel. Floodlights swept the driveway. A beam caught him, blindingly bright. Target acquired. By the van. Leo's fingers brushed the serrated edge of the key. He snatched it up, threw himself at the driver's side door, and jammed the key into the lock. The mechanism was sticky. It always was, and he had to jiggle it, screaming a stream of profanities that would have made a sailor blush. The lock clicked. Leo tore the door open and dove inside just as the rear window shattered. The sound was deafening within the metal box. Safety glass rained down on the back of his neck like hail. He scrambled into the driver's seat. The vinyl cracked and cold against his legs. He jammed the key into the ignition and turned. The engine cranked. *RRRR. "Come on, old girl," Leo begged, tears of frustration pricking his eyes. "Don't do this. Not today." A man in a dark tactical vest appeared at the front of the van, raising a suppressed pistol. He was 10 feet away. Leo could see the emptiness in his eyes. The man fired. The windshield spiderwebbed directly in front of Leo's face. A white starburst of destruction. If the glass hadn't been laminated, Leo would have been dead. As it was, he flinched so hard he slammed his knee into the steering column. He turned the key again, pumping the gas pedal. The V8 roared to life. A rough, sputtering cough that settled into a chaotic idle. Leo didn't check his mirrors. He didn't check his blind spot. He slammed the gearshift into drive and stomped on the accelerator. The van possessed the aerodynamic properties of a brick and the acceleration of a glacier, but the gravel offered little resistance. The rear tires spun, spraying stones like buckshot before biting into the earth. The van fishtailed violently, the back end swinging out and clipping a stone urn, shattering it. The gunman in front of him dove to the side, rolling across the wet grass. Leo hunched low over the steering wheel, trying to see through the spiderweb cracks in the glass. The world was a fractured kaleidoscope of rain, light, and terror. More shots hammered the side of the van. *thwack thwack thwack. It sounded like someone throwing handfuls of coins against the metal. One bullet punched through the thin sheet metal of the side door and exited through the dashboard, burying itself in the glove compartment with a hiss of plastic. "Go, go, go!" Leo screamed, the steering wheel shuddering in his grip. He careened down the winding driveway. The iron gates were ahead. They were closing. Slowly, majestically, the massive wrought iron barriers were swinging shut, driven by silent electric motors. Leo judged the distance. He judged the speed of the van. He judged the gap. "I'm not going to make it." He pressed the pedal until it hit the floor mat. The engine whined, a high-pitched protest of aging belts and pistons. The speedometer crept past 40. The gap was closing. 10 feet, 8 feet, 6. Leo braced himself, squeezing his eyes shut for a fraction of a second. The rusty bucket hit the gap. Metal shrieked against metal. The side mirrors were torn off instantly. The van shuddered violently as it scraped through the narrowing aperture, sparks showering the wet pavement like fireworks. The screech was ear-splitting, a banshee wail of steel tearing steel. Then a pop. The rear bumper caught on the gate latch and ripped free, clattering onto the driveway behind him. But he was through. The van shot out onto the public road, tires squealing as they hit the asphalt. Leo fought the wheel, correcting the skid, the heavy vehicle swaying dangerously. He straightened out, the headlights cutting a yellow swathes through the darkness of the winding canyon road. He didn't slow down. He couldn't. He watched the rearview mirror. For a moment, there was nothing but the rain-slicked road. Then, twin beams of high-intensity HID headlights pierced the dark. A black SUV. Fast. Low to the ground. "Of course," Leo muttered, his voice cracking. "Of course they have a chase car." He reached into his pocket, his hand shaking so hard he almost dropped the phone again. He pulled it out. The screen was cracked. a hairline fracture running diagonally across the display, but the recording light was still blinking. Asterisk saved. He tapped the screen to stop the recording. The file saved. Asterisk untitled _voice _memo _14. M4A star. He threw the phone onto the passenger seat as if it were radioactive. The SUV behind him was closing the distance. Leo could see the silhouette of the driver, the aggressive stance of the vehicle. It was a Range Rover or a Porsche Cayenne, something with 3 times the horsepower of his delivery van. Leo looked at the gas gauge, just under a quarter tank. He looked at the speedometer, 60 miles per hour, and the van was shaking like a washing machine with a brick inside. He looked at the windshield, shattered and opaque except for a small hole near the dashboard. "Okay," Leo whispered to the empty cabin, the smell of exhaust and fear heavy in the air. "Okay. Think, Leo. You know these roads. You drive them every day for tips." He gripped the wheel. His knuckles were white. The delivery app on the seat beside him pinged again, a cheerful reminder of a life that felt a million miles away. Missed opportunity. Order reassigned. "Yeah." Leo choked out a laugh, a hysterical, jagged sound. "I think I'm going to miss a few deadlines tonight." He cut the wheel hard to the left, taking a narrow, unmarked fire road that most GPS systems ignored. The van bounced violently, shocks bottoming out, plunging into the deep woods. The SUV's headlights flashed past the turn, then screeched, reversing. Leo Vance, delivery driver, was off the route. And for the first time in his life, he had cargo that actually mattered. The only problem was keeping it and himself intact until sunrise. The rain in Chicago did not wash things clean. It merely varnished the grime, turning the cracked asphalt of the Kennedy Expressway into a slick, obsidian mirror that reflected the fractured neon of a city eating itself alive. Leo Vance gripped the steering wheel of his nondescript charcoal sedan with white-knuckled ferocity. The leather was tacky with the humidity of the storm and the cold sweat radiating from his palms. The rhythmic thwack hiss of the windshield wipers was the only metronome keeping his heart from galloping out of his chest. He was driving too fast for the conditions, hydroplaning slightly every time he changed lanes, the tires losing their grip on reality for a terrifying fraction of a second before biting back into the road. He wasn't looking at the road, not really. His eyes were darting to the rearview mirror every 4 seconds, a tick born of 3 years in the courier game, now accelerated into a full-blown neurosis. Behind him, the endless stream of headlights blurred into a river of angry bioluminescence. Was that Ford Explorer following him? Had that BMW changed lanes when he did? Leo forced a breath through his teeth, the air tasting of recirculated AC and stale coffee. He reached over to the passenger seat, his fingers trembling as they brushed the cold metal casing of the digital recorder. It was a sleek, heavy thing, archaic in a world of cloud storage, yet favored by men who understood that the cloud was just someone else's computer waiting to be subpoenaed. He hit play. The voice that filled the cabin was not loud, but it possessed a subsonic rumble that seemed to vibrate in the hollows of Leo's molars. It was a voice cured in cigar smoke and violence. "Vittorio Moretti. The Vulture. Logistics are irrelevant, councilman. I don't pay you for the how. I pay you for the when. The container sits in berth 44. If customs cracks that seal, you won't just lose your pension. You'll lose the capacity to enjoy it." Leo hit pause. The silence rushed back in, louder than the storm. He had stolen a package. That was the job. A simple intercept, a wrong drop, orchestrated by a rival faction who had paid Leo 10 grand to swap a satchel at the drop point in the loop. But Leo, driven by a fatal curiosity that had derailed his career as a systems analyst 5 years ago, hadn't just swapped the bags. He had looked, and then he had kept the digital drive he found taped to the bottom of the decoy. He hit play again. "The girls are in the second container," Moretti's voice continued, casual as a man ordering a sandwich. Asterisk, "the tech is in the first. If the thermal scanners pick up the body heat in container 2, we scrub the mission. Burn it all. The insurance payout is worth more than the cargo." Leo slammed his hand against the stop button, nearly swerving into the concrete divider. The bile rose in his throat, hot and acidic. He had thought it was drugs, maybe corporate espionage, industrial blueprints, but this was flesh. And the tech mentioned, it sounded like guidance chips, the kind embargoed for export. He was driving a hearse. That's what this car was now. A mobile coffin. He took the Armitage exit, the sudden deceleration throwing him forward against the seatbelt. He needed to get off the highway. The open road felt too exposed, a shooting gallery. He needed the claustrophobic embrace of the surface streets, the grid where he could disappear. He navigated the labyrinth of Bucktown, the gentrified brick facades looming like silent judges in the downpour. He checked his mirrors. The Ford Explorer had continued on the highway. He was clear, for now. But the paranoia was a parasite burrowing deeper. Why had the swap been so easy? Why leave a recorder like this unprotected? Unless it wasn't unprotected. Leo's mind, once a steel trap for code and algorithms, began to spin simulations of disaster. He thought of his apartment in the near West Side, a converted industrial loft that smelled of ozone and old timber. It was his fortress. His server rack was there. If he could decrypt the metadata on the drive, maybe he could find leverage. Or maybe he could find a way to disappear. He turned onto his street, killing the headlights a block away, a habit from his days running gray market hardware. He rolled the car into the alley behind his building, the tires crunching over wet gravel and broken glass. He sat there for a long minute, the engine ticking as it cooled, listening to the rain drum against the roof. Nothing moved. The alley was a canyon of shadows, smelling of wet cardboard and dumpster rot. Leo grabbed the recorder and his messenger bag, shoving the device deep into a pocket lined with Faraday fabric, a copper-nickel mesh designed to block RF signals. He stepped out into the rain, the cold water instantly soaking his hoodie, plastering his hair to his skull. He moved quickly, not running, but walking with the purposeful stride of a predator or prey, seeking the service entrance. Inside, the building was quiet. The freight elevator groaned as it ascended, the metal cage rattling. Leo watched the floor numbers light up, counting down the seconds of his life. He stepped out into the hallway. The air here was dry and still, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. He walked to door 504, his keys already in hand, splayed between his knuckles like brass knuckles. He unlocked the 3 deadbolts in rapid succession. Asterisk click, clack, thud asterisk, and slipped inside, locking them immediately behind him. Home. The loft was a cavern of shadows, illuminated only by the standby LEDs of his server rack in the corner. It hummed, a comforting, electric lullaby. Leo didn't turn on the lights. He knew the geography of this room better than the lines on his own face. He navigated past the island counter, past the stack of unread mail, straight to the workstation. He threw the bag onto the desk and collapsed into his errand chair. He woke the monitors. 3 screens flared to life, bathing his pale, unshaven face in a harsh blue glow. "Okay," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Let's see what you are." He pulled the recorder out. He didn't plug it in directly, that was rookie suicide. Instead, he pulled a sanitized laptop from a drawer, a machine that had never touched the internet, its wireless card physically removed. He connected the recorder via a right-blocked USB cable. The file directory popped up. Audio files. Hundreds of them. But it was the hidden partition that caught his eye. A ghost drive. Leo's fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, the clack-clack-clack echoing in the loft. He ran a hex dump on the partition header. His blood ran cold. It wasn't just audio. Embedded in the waveforms was a steganographic layer. Data hidden within sound. He ran a script to extract it, watching the progress bar crawl across the screen. Complete. A text file opened. It was a log. Asterisk timestamp. 2042. Device ID. V77. Geolocation. 41.
8781 degrés N, 87.
6298 stopni W. Timestamp. Godzina 20:45.
Device ID. V77. Geolocation. 41.
8820 degrés N, 87.
6,320 degrees west. Leo stared, his breath hitching. The timestamps were from tonight, the geolocations. He quickly pulled up a map on his main rig and punched in the coordinates. The first point was the drop site. The second point was the highway on-ramp. The third point was the Armitage exit. The device wasn't just a recorder. It was a transponder. It had been pinging a remote server every 3 minutes via a burst transmission on a low-frequency cellular band. He hadn't just stolen evidence. He had stolen a homing beacon. And he had brought it straight to his sanctuary. Stupid, Leo hissed, slamming his fist onto the desk. Stupid, arrogant. He looked at the Faraday pocket in his bag. It worked, but he had taken the device out in the car to listen to it. He had exposed it. They had his route. They had his vector. And with a simple extrapolation algorithm, they had his destination. Leo spun in his chair, his eyes scanning the loft as if the walls were suddenly made of glass. He felt the weight of the city pressing in on him. He needed to leave. Now. But first, the window. He moved to the large, industrial window that overlooked the street. He didn't pull the blackout curtains back. He peered through the small slit where the fabric met the frame. The rain was coming down harder now, sheets of gray water washing out the streetlights. The street below was mostly empty, lined with the usual assortment of parked cars. But there, directly across from his building's entrance, sat a vehicle that hadn't been there when he arrived. A black Chevrolet Suburban. It was idling. No headlights. No interior lights. Just a dark monolith sitting in the rain. The exhaust pipe puffed rhythmic clouds of white steam, the only sign the beast was alive. Leo watched, frozen. The rear window of the SUV rolled down 3 inches. Just enough for smoke to curl out. Cigarette smoke. Then he saw it. A second car. A gray sedan parked 2 car lengths behind the SUV. It looked official. American-made. Bland. Leo squinted. In the driver's seat of the gray sedan, the glow of a dashboard laptop illuminated a face. A woman. She was looking at the SUV, then up at Leo's building. Agent Sarah Thorne. He didn't know her name yet, but he knew the type. FBI? Or DA? She wasn't with Moretti. The Mafia didn't use mid-tier government sedans, and they certainly didn't sit on laptops in plain sight. She was watching the Vulture's men. This complication terrified him more than the Mafia hit squad. If the feds were here, it meant this wasn't just a gang war. It was a RICO case. It was federal prison. It was being squeezed between the law and the lawless until he popped. The back door of the black SUV opened. 2 men stepped out. They moved with a synchronized fluidity that spoke of military training or expensive contract work. They wore dark rain slickers and baseball caps pulled low. One of them carried a duffel bag that hung heavy, the shape of it suggesting tools. Breaching tools. Or disposal tools. They didn't look around. They walked straight toward the front door of his building. Leo scrambled back from the window, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He had 3 minutes. Maybe 4 if the security door held them up. But men like that didn't get held up by buzzers. He sprinted back to his desk. The go bag. It was already packed, sitting under the floorboards beneath his bed. But he didn't have time to unscrew the panel. He grabbed his secondary bag, a sturdy, waterproof tactical backpack hanging by the door. He swept his arm across the desk, knocking monitors aside. He grabbed the sanitized laptop. He grabbed the encrypted hard drives containing his life's work, his leverage. He snatched a stack of burner phones from a drawer, clutching them like prayer beads. He paused at the safe in the wall. Spin, left, right, click. He pulled out a stack of cash 30,000 in non-sequential bills, and a Sig Sauer P365. He checked the chamber. Loaded. He had never fired it in anger, only at paper targets at a range in Indiana. The weight of it felt alien and heavy in his sweating palm. He shoved it into his waistband. Thud. A sound from the hallway. Heavy. Muffled. They were on the floor. They had bypassed the elevator and taken the stairs. They were fast. Leo looked at the front door. It was a solid core oak door with a steel frame reinforced. But against a battering ram or a shotgun slug, it was just wood. He looked at the fire escape window on the north wall. It led to the alley, but the drop from the bottom ladder was 12 feet. Doable. Asterisk crack. The sound was deafening. The wood around the deadbolt on his front door splintered inward. The door shuddered violently but held. "Open the door, Leo," a voice called out. It wasn't shouting. It was calm, professional. "We just want to talk about the property you acquired." Leo didn't answer. He was moving. He grabbed a heavy server tower, an old rig he didn't need, and dragged it in front of the door. It wouldn't stop them, but it would buy him 10 seconds. Asterisk crack. The door bowed inward. A sliver of light from the hallway pierced the gloom of the loft. Leo ran to the north window. He threw the latch. It was stuck, painted shut by the landlord 3 years ago. "Come on," he grunted, slamming the heel of his hand against the frame. "Come on, you piece of..." Asterisk crash. The front door gave way. It flew open, hitting the server tower with a metallic screech. Leo didn't look back. He grabbed a heavy brass lamp from the bedside table and swung it with all his might against the window pane. The glass shattered outward, a shower of diamonds falling into the rainy night. The noise was tremendous, alerting everyone in a 3-block radius, but secrecy was a luxury he could no longer afford. "He's running!" someone shouted from the doorway. Leo vaulted onto the sill. The rain hit him like a physical blow, cold and stinging. He grabbed the rusted iron railing of the fire escape and swung himself out. Footsteps thundered across the wooden floor of the loft behind him. Leo didn't bother with the stairs. He jumped over the railing to the landing below, landing in a crouch that sent a shockwave of pain through his ankles. He scrambled up, slipping on the wet metal, his hands grasping for the next railing. A gunshot cracked, a dry, popping sound distinct from the thunder. A chunk of brick exploded a foot from his head, spraying red dust into his eyes. They were shooting. They weren't here to talk. Leo dropped to the next level, sliding down the ladder, the rust scraping the skin off his palms. He could hear them on the fire escape above him now, heavy boots clanging on the metal. He reached the final platform. The drop to the alley was below him. He looked down. Puddles reflected the gray sky. He hesitated. Above him, a silhouette leaned over the railing. A suppressor-equipped muzzle flashed. Asterisk fut. Asterisk a bullet pinged off the metal grate between his feet. Leo let go. He fell through the air, flailing. He hit the ground hard, rolling as he had practiced, but his shoulder slammed into a dumpster with a sickening crunch. Pain blinded him for a second, white and hot. He scrambled to his feet, gasping, clutching his shoulder. He was in the alley. He looked toward the street. The black SUV was there, but the gray sedan, the government car, was moving. It screeched around the corner, entering the alley mouth, blocking his exit to the main road. Leo spun around. The other end of the alley was a maze of loading docks. He ran. He ran past the overflowing dumpsters, past the rats scurrying for cover, his feet splashing through puddles of oil and water. His lungs burned. The weight of the bag slammed against his spine with every step. Behind him, he heard the SUV engine roar as it tried to squeeze into the alley, scraping sparks against the brick walls. Leo ducked into a narrow breezeway between 2 warehouses, a space barely wide enough for a man. He squeezed through, the rough brick tearing at his jacket. He emerged onto a side street, confused, disoriented. He needed a car. He needed to get off the grid. He saw a transit bus idling at a red light a block away. The number 56, Milwaukee Avenue. He sprinted, his legs pumping, fueled by pure adrenaline. He reached the bus just as the doors were hissing shut. He jammed his arm in the gap. The doors recoiled. "Hey, watch it!" the driver yelled, a heavy-set man with tired eyes. Leo stumbled up the steps, dripping wet, wild-eyed, clutching his bag. He fumbled in his pocket and jammed a wad of wet dollar bills into the fare machine, way more than the fare. "Just drive," Leo gasped, collapsing into the first seat. "Please." The driver looked at him, then at the money, and shrugged. He hit the gas. The bus lurched forward, merging into traffic. Leo slumped against the cold window, sliding down until he was below the glass line. He watched the streetlights streak by, blurring into lines of light. He reached into his pocket and touched the hard drive. He was alive. He had the evidence. But as the bus turned a corner, Leo looked back. Through the rain-streaked rear window, he saw the gray sedan pull out of the alley and slip seamlessly into the traffic behind the bus. It didn't speed up. It didn't flash lights. It just followed, a silent, gray shark in the wake of his escape. Leo closed his eyes and listened to the rain. The route had gone silent, but the chase had just begun. The neon sign of the starlight motor buzzed with the irregular, dying heartbeat of a trapped insect. Asterisk starly, star, light, asterisk through the thin, nicotine-stained curtains. The intermittent red flash painted the room in the color of a fresh wound. Leo Vance sat on the edge of the mattress, the cheap polyester bedspread stiff beneath his palms. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. The silence of the room was heavy, smelling of industrial cleaner and decades of accumulated despair. Beside him sat the object that had dismantled his life. A matte black external hard drive, no larger than a deck of cards, resting on the nightstand like a miniature monolith. He stared at his hands. They were trembling, not a violent shake, but a high-frequency vibration that traveled up his forearms and settled as a knot of tension at the base of his skull. "You're a ghost," Leo told himself, repeating the mantra he'd adopted somewhere between the burning wreck in Chapter 1 and the stolen sedan now cooling in the parking lot. Asterisk ghosts don't leave footprints. Ghosts don't breathe. But ghosts didn't have to worry about IP addresses or digital fingerprints. He stood up, his joints popping, and walked to the window. He parted the curtain by a fraction of an inch. The parking lot was a sea of gray asphalt, slick with the mid-morning drizzle that had plagued the Midwest for 3 days. His car, a rusted Honda Civic purchased for $800 cash from a mechanic who didn't ask for ID, sat unobtrusively between a pickup truck and a dumpster. He needed a connection. The motel Wi-Fi was a death sentence. It was unencrypted, monitored, and likely the first place they would look if they narrowed down his triangulation. He needed a public terminal. A library. Leo went to the bathroom sink and splashed cold water on his face. He looked into the mirror. The man staring back was a stranger. The dark circles under his eyes looked like bruises. The 3-day stubble grayed his jawline, aging him 10 years. He wasn't the courier anymore. He wasn't the man who moved sensitive corporate documents for high-end law firms. He was a loose end. He remembered the rain on the tarmac 3 nights ago. The way the contact, Miller, had looked when the bullet took him. Miller had shoved the drive into Leo's chest, his blood warm and sticky on Leo's jacket. "Protocol 0, Miller had choked out, red froth bubbling on his lips. Asterisk, get it to Thorne. Don't trust the encrypted channels. Use the drop. Public line. Asterisk Protocol 0. Asterisk it sounded like a bad movie title, but in the underworld of data trafficking, it meant the nuclear option. A blind drop to a federal tip line, bypassed through layers of anonymity so dense that not even the NSA could backtrack it in real time. Leo grabbed his duffel bag. He checked the Glock 19 tucked into his waistband at the small of his back. It felt alien. A cold lump of steel that promised violence he wasn't sure he was capable of delivering. He grabbed the hard drive, hesitated, and then slipped it into his inner jacket pocket, close to his heart. The drive to the Cedar Rapids Public Library was a blur of strip malls and chain restaurants. The American landscape had become a threatening, blurry loop of consumerism. Every traffic camera looked like a watching eye. Every police cruiser that idled at a red light sent a spike of adrenaline through Leo's veins that tasted like copper. He parked 3 blocks away, in the lot of a failing grocery store. Walking felt safer. It gave him time to spot a tail. He pulled his collar up against the drizzle, keeping his head down, mimicking the posture of the downtrodden who wandered these streets. The library was a modern fortress of glass and brick, a stark contrast to the decaying urban sprawl around it. It was a sanctuary of silence. Leo pushed through the revolving doors, the the rush of climate-controlled air drying the dampness on his skin. The smell hit him instantly: old paper, binding glue, and the faint, metallic scent of ozone from the computer lab. It was quiet, save for the hushed whispers of students and the rhythmic thud stamp of a librarian checking out books. Leo didn't make eye contact. He walked past the help desk, navigating toward the public computer terminals located in the back corner, nestled near the reference stacks. It was a strategic choice. The area was secluded, shadowed by tall shelves of encyclopedias that nobody used anymore. There were 6 terminals. 2 were occupied, one by an elderly woman playing solitaire, the other by a teenager with headphones, slumped over a YouTube video. Leo took the terminal furthest from the aisle. He sat down, the plastic chair creaking under his weight. He took a breath, holding it for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4. Focus. He didn't boot the library's OS directly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a USB thumb drive, his own tool, loaded with a portable Linux-based operating system designed for anonymity. He plugged it in and restarted the machine, fingers dancing over the F12 key to enter the boot menu. The screen flickered, went black, and then a simple command line appeared. Loading tails. He was in. He connected to the library's network, but immediately routed the connection through the Tor network, bouncing his signal from Iowa to Switzerland, then to Singapore, and finally to a server in Iceland. He plugged in the black hard drive. The file was there.
Audio-Dump-774.
Wave. It was innocuous in name, but lethal in content. He had listened to the first 30 seconds in the motel before he realized what he was holding. It wasn't just corporate espionage. It was a recording of a conspiracy that reached the bedrock of the Senate. He opened the browser and navigated to the FBI's public tip portal. But he didn't use the standard form. He typed in a specific URL extension Miller had whispered to him months ago over drinks, a backdoor for assets in distress. Enter passkey. Leo typed, Valkyrie_descends. The screen flashed green. Access granted. Agent S. Thorn. Dropbox active. He dragged the audio file into the upload box. Uploading. The progress bar was a thin blue line, crawling with agonizing slowness. The library's bandwidth was being throttled. Leo's leg began to bounce. He scanned the room. The elderly woman was still playing solitaire. The teenager hadn't moved. A librarian with thick glasses was shelving books in the biography section, her cart squeaking rhythmically. Leo felt a prickle on the back of his neck. It was a primal instinct, the feeling of being observed by a predator. He glanced at the reflective glass of the window to his left. It mirrored the room behind him. Nothing, just the stacks. Then the screen flickered. A red dialog box popped up in the corner of his Linux desktop. It wasn't from the OS. It was a network admin alert. System alert. Unusual encryption detected. Admin notified. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. The library's cybersecurity wasn't sophisticated, but the Protocol Zero VPN tunnel was so heavy it had triggered a bandwidth alarm. He hadn't been hacked, but he had drawn attention. He looked toward the front desk. The head librarian was staring at a monitor, frowning. She picked up the phone. "Come on," Leo whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "Come on, you piece of junk." The librarian put the phone down and looked toward the computer lab. She said something to a security guard, a rent-a-cop with a bored expression, who started walking slowly toward the back. Leo could handle a security guard. He could talk his way out of that. Sorry, just downloading some big game files. But then the revolving doors at the front of the library spun. Time seemed to dilate, stretching out like taffy. A man entered. He was tall, wearing a charcoal gray trench coat that was perfectly tailored, untouched by the rain. He moved with a liquid grace that defied his size. His hair was slicked back, silver at the temples, and his face was a mask of indifference. He carried a leather satchel.
Vittorio Moretti.
The vulture. Leo's blood turned to ice. He knew the face from the dossiers Miller had shown him. Moretti wasn't a hitman, he was a cleaner. He didn't just kill, he erased. He removed people, evidence, and memories. If Moretti was here, they had tracked the car. Or the credit card Leo had used for gas 2 towns over. Moretti didn't look at the librarian. He didn't look at the security guard. He stopped in the center of the lobby, his head tilting slightly, inhaling the air as if he could scent fear among the old books. He turned. His eyes, dark and void of humanity, locked onto the computer lab. He couldn't see Leo behind the stacks, but he knew. Leo looked at the screen. He couldn't pull the drive yet. If he severed the connection, the upload would corrupt. The security guard was 20 feet away. Moretti was 50 feet away, but closing the distance with long, silent strides. Leo made a decision. He minimized the upload window, leaving it running in the background. He pulled his hood up. The security guard reached the row. "Sir, we're getting some flags from this terminal. I need you to." Leo stood up abruptly, keeping his back to the lobby.
Sorry.
System froze.
I'm rebooting.
"Sir, turn around." Leo turned, keeping his head low, shifting his body to block the guard's view of the screen where the progress bar was inching toward completion. Through the gap in the shelves, he saw Moretti bypass the help desk. The librarian tried to stop him, but Moretti simply held up a badge, likely a high-level federal forgery, and kept moving. Moretti reached into his coat. He didn't draw a gun. That would cause panic. He drew a suppressor, threading it onto a pistol hidden within the folds of his coat. The movement was so subtle, so practiced, that only someone looking for it would see it. "Sir, I need to see ID," the guard said, reaching for Leo's arm. "Get your hand off me." Leo hissed, low and dangerous. The guard blinked, surprised by the venom in the unkempt man's voice. Leo glanced at the screen. Moretti was entering the reference section. He was 10 seconds away. Leo looked at the guard. "Fire," he whispered. "What? Fire?" Leo screamed at the top of his lungs, shattering the library's silence. He shoved the guard hard into the shelf of encyclopedias. The heavy books cascaded down with a thunderous crash. The guard stumbled, yelling in surprise. Chaos erupted. The elderly woman shrieked. The teenager ripped off his headphones. In the confusion, Leo spun back to the screen. Asterisk upload complete. Leo ripped the thumb drive and the hard drive out of the ports. The screen went black as the live OS terminated. He didn't look back. He dove into the aisle to his right, scrambling on hands and knees into the fiction stacks just as a phut sound, like a heavy book being closed, echoed through the air. A chunk of the computer monitor he had just been using exploded into plastic shrapnel. The vulture had fired. Leo scrambled upright, sprinting down the aisle labeled MP. He heard no screams of gun. Yet, the silencer and the crashing books had masked the shot. To the patrons, this was just a brawl. Leo ducked into the sci-fi/fantasy section. The shelves here were taller, creating a labyrinth of paper and dust. He pressed his back against the metal end cap of a shelf, his chest heaving. He drew the Glock. His hands were sweating so badly he was afraid he'd drop it. The library was shifting from confusion to panic. People were moving toward the exits. "Please remain calm." The librarian's voice wavered over the intercom. Leo listened. Amidst the shuffling of feet and the murmurs of the crowd, he listened for the one sound that mattered. The rhythmic, predatory gait of Vittorio Moretti. There. Asterisk step. Pause. Step. Pause. Moretti wasn't running. He was hunting. He was moving parallel to the computer lab, sweeping the aisles. He knew Leo hadn't made it to the door. Leo looked around. He was trapped in the southwest corner. The emergency exit was on the north wall, past the children's section. To get there, he had to cross the open central atrium. He peeked around the edge of the shelf. Moretti was at the end of the aisle, 20 yards away. The cleaner held the pistol low against his thigh. He looked bored. He checked the history aisle, then the biography aisle. He was thorough. Leo needed a distraction. Not noise. Moretti wouldn't flinch at noise. He needed a target. Leo grabbed a thick hardcover book from the shelf. Asterisk Dune Star. He weighed it in his hand. He waited until Moretti stepped into the view of the next aisle. Leo threw the book high and hard, arching it over 2 rows of shelves toward the window. The book hit a metal cart on the other side with a loud clang. Moretti didn't turn instantly. He paused. He calculated. It was a trap and he knew it, but instinct forced him to shift his weapon toward the sound for a fraction of a second. That was all Leo needed. Leo bolted. He didn't run away from Moretti. He ran diagonally across the gap, sprinting toward the children's section. Moretti saw the movement. He pivoted with terrifying speed. Leo threw himself into a slide across the polished linoleum floor, crashing into a low shelf of colorful picture books. *fut. 2 bullets punched into the wood directly where Leo's head had been a microsecond before. Paper confetti exploded into the air, drifting down like snow. Leo scrambled on all fours, crawling through the reading castle, a plywood structure designed for toddlers. He was hyperventilating. The absurdity of dying inside a plywood castle in Iowa almost made him laugh. He burst out the other side, right in front of the emergency exit. He hit the push bar. Alarm will sound. The door swung open, and the screeching siren of the fire alarm finally tore the air apart. The noise was deafening, a physical assault on the senses. Leo tumbled out into the alleyway behind the library. The rain hit him instantly, cold and grounding. He didn't stop. He scrambled to his feet, slipping on wet pavement, and sprinted toward the street. He didn't go to his car. Moretti would have the car rigged or blocked. The car was burned. Leo ran into the traffic of 4th Avenue. Horns blared. He vaulted the hood of a taxi, ignoring the driver's shout, and disappeared into the crowd of pedestrians rushing for cover from the rain. He kept running until his lungs burned and his legs felt like lead. He ducked into a subway station, or what passed for a transit hub in this city, merging with the flow of humanity. Only when he was 3 miles away, sitting in the back of a city bus, did he allow himself to check his phone, a burner he'd bought at a gas station. He pulled up the secure encrypted chat app, linked to the same key he'd used for the upload. A single message was waiting. Sender, unknown time, 11:42 a.m. message. Package received.
Audio verified.
Protocol 0 is active. Do not go back to the motel. Go to Union Station. Locker 404. You have 2 hours. Leo slumped against the cold window of the bus. He watched the rain streak the glass, blurring the city into a watercolor of gray and red. He touched his chest. The hard drive was still there, but the burden was shared now. The ghost had screamed, and someone had finally heard him. Washington, D.C. J. Edgar Hoover Building. Agent Sarah Thorne stared at her monitor. The waveform of the audio file was jagged, spiking with the voices of dead men and powerful traders. She pulled her headphones off, her hands shaking slightly. She looked around the bustling bullpen of the cyber division. People were drinking coffee, laughing, complaining about paperwork. They had no idea that the world had just shifted on its axis. She picked up her secure line. "Director," she said, her voice steady, betraying none of the fear churning in her gut. "We have a code 0. The Vance file is real, and he just uploaded the smoking gun." She paused, listening to the silence on the other end. "Get a team to Cedar Rapids," she said, "and tell them to tread lightly. The vulture is in the field." She hung up. She looked back at the screen, at the progress bar that was now a solid, comforting green. *download complete. The game had changed. Leo Vance wasn't just running anymore. He was fighting back. Sarah grabbed her jacket and her badge. She wasn't going to let him die. Not today. Back in the alley behind the library, Vittorio Moretti stood in the rain. The fire alarm was still wailing, a monotonous shriek. He holstered his weapon and adjusted his cuffs. He looked at the open emergency door. He looked at the scuff marks on the pavement where Leo had slipped. Moretti pulled out a sleek silver phone. He dialed a number. "He's fast," Moretti said softly. "And he's lucky." He listened for a moment. "Yes," Moretti replied. "He made the drop. The file is in the wild." He watched a drop of rain run down the length of his leather glove. "No matter," Moretti said. "The chase makes the meat sweeter." I'll have him by sunset. He hung up, turned his collar up against the wind, and walked away into the gray afternoon, a shark disappearing back into the deep. The progress bar on the laptop screen was a green worm crawling through the mud of bad bandwidth, a pixelated sluggishness that seemed to mock the pounding rhythm of Leo Vance's heart. Asterisk 98%. Leo sat in the corner booth of Sal's 24-hour skillet, a roadside diner that smelled of burnt coffee grounds and ammonia-soaked linoleum. Outside, the South Dakota rain lashed against the plate glass, blurring the neon sign into a weeping smear of red and blue. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was watching the reflection in the window, specifically the sweep of the parking lot where the semi-trucks slept like hulking prehistoric beasts. Asterisk 99%. His hands, stained with the permanent grease ghosting of a lifetime spent under chassis, rested flat on the Formica table. They were trembling, just a micro-tremor visible only to him, the same way he could feel a cylinder misfire in a diesel engine just by the vibration in the steering column. He clamped his hands together. Asterisk upload complete. The text flashed, innocent and terrifying. The server in D.C., the secure Dropbox agent Sarah Thorne had provided, now held the encrypted ledger that proved the Moretti family was laundering cartel money through municipal construction contracts. Leo had done his part. He had initiated Protocol Zero. Then the screen went black. Not sleep mode. Dead. Leo frowned, hitting the power button. Nothing. A second later, the diner's overhead lights flickered and died, plunging the room into a gray gloom illuminated only by the headlights of passing cars on the interstate. The murmur of the few patrons, 2 truckers and a waitress with tired eyes, rose in confusion. Leo didn't need light to know what happened. He knew the distinct, heavy crunch of gravel under run-flat tires. He knew the sound of a heavy door closing with a vacuum seal. He stood up, shoving the dead laptop into his canvas messenger bag. He dropped a $20 bill on the table, not waiting for the check. As he moved toward the kitchen swing doors, bypassing the front exit, he glanced out the side window. 3 black Chevrolet Suburbans were idling in the rain, forming a tactical semicircle around the diner's entrance. They were unmarked, pristine, and radiated a predatory stillness. The lead vehicle's window rolled down, and even through the rain and the diner's glass, Leo saw the profile. The sharp, aquiline nose, the slicked-back silver hair, the eyes that looked like drilled holes in a sheet of steel.
Vittorio Moretti.
They called him the Vulture because he didn't just kill. He picked the carcass clean. He was supposed to be in New York. The fact that he was here, in the middle of a deluge in the American Midwest, meant the digital triangulation had happened faster than Thorne had promised. Leo slipped into the kitchen. The cook, a heavy-set man scraping a griddle, looked up. "Hey, power's out, buddy. You can't be back here." "Health inspector." Leo lied, his voice gravelly and calm. He kept walking, past the hissing deep fryers, out the back steel door, and into the alleyway where the dumpsters rotted in the rain. The cold water hit him instantly, soaking his jacket. He needed a vehicle. His own truck, a beat-up Silverado, was parked out front, boxed in by the Suburbans. It was a dead asset. He scanned the rear lot. It was mostly employee parking. A rusted Honda Civic with a flat tire, a bicycle chained to a pipe, and then 20 yards away, parked near the overflow drainage ditch, a 2006 Dodge Charger. It wasn't an SRT. It was a base model, the paint fading, a cracked taillight taped over with red cellophane. But it was rear-wheel drive, heavy, and it had a V8. It belonged to a kid Leo had seen smoking near the entrance earlier, spinning a keychain around his finger. Leo sprinted, his boots splashing in the oil-slicked puddles. He reached the Charger. Locked, of course. He didn't panic. He didn't smash the window. The noise would draw fire. He pulled a slim, flat piece of tensile steel from his boot, a modified shim he used for calibrating calipers. He slid it between the weather stripping and the glass. His mind shifted gears, accessing the muscle memory of 20 years as a mechanic. He wasn't thinking about the FBI or the hitmen. He was visualizing the linkage rod inside the door panel. Asterisk down, hook, lift. The lock popped with a dull thud. Leo was inside in a second. He ignored the smell of stale cigarettes and cheap pine air freshener. He ripped the plastic cowling off the steering column. He didn't need to hotwire it the movie way. He bypassed the ignition relay with a jumper wire he kept in his belt kit. The engine turned over, a rough, coughing roar that settled into a rhythmic idle. The timing belt was loose, he could hear the slap, but the compression was good. He threw the gearshift into reverse just as the back door of the diner kicked open. Two men in tactical rain gear burst out, submachine guns raised. Leo didn't look back. He stomped the gas. The Charger's rear tires spun on the wet asphalt, finding grip and shooting the car backward. He whipped the wheel, spinning the nose around, and slammed it into drive. Bullets pinged off the rear bumper, metallic kisses of death. One shattered the rear windshield, showering the back seat in safety glass diamonds. Leo ducked instinctively, gunning the engine. The Charger fishtailed, then straightened, roaring out of the back lot and tearing onto the on-ramp of Interstate 90. The highway was a river of darkness. I-90 stretched out like a black ribbon laid across the spine of the continent, the white lane markers flashing by in a hypnotic staccato. The rain had intensified, turning the world into a blur of gray wash and sudden, blinding reflections. Leo held the steering wheel at 10 and 2, his knuckles white. The Charger rattled at 80 miles per hour. The suspension was shot. Every expansion joint in the bridge felt like a hammer blow to the chassis. He checked the rearview mirror. Nothing yet, just the darkness and the spray from his own tires. He took a breath, trying to slow his heart rate. He needed to think like a mechanic, not a fugitive. A mechanic solves problems one bolt at a time. The problem was distance. The rendezvous point Agent Thorne had given him was mile marker 32, an old way station 40 miles west. Asterisk flashback. Asterisk the smell of sawdust and 10W30 oil. His father's garage in Ohio 20 years ago. The old man was leaning over the open hood of a '69 Chevelle, a cigarette dangling from his lip, the ash defying gravity. Asterisk, you drive with your ass, Leo, not your hands, his father had said, tapping the fender with a wrench. The hands just point the way. Your ass tells you what the car is doing. It tells you if the differential is slipping, if the tires are breaking loose. You gotta feel the metal moving under you. You gotta be the transmission. Asterisk Leo, 12 years old, had nodded, wiping grease on his jeans. What if it breaks, Pop? Asterisk everything breaks, kid. The trick is knowing when it's gonna break, and making sure you aren't the one holding the pieces when it does. Asterisk return to present. The memory dissolved as a pair of high-intensity xenon headlights cut through the rain behind him. They were far back, maybe half a mile, but closing fast. Too fast for civilian traffic in this weather. Leo squinted at the mirror. As the lights drew closer, they split. 2 sets, then 3. The wolf pack. Moretti's convoy had caught up. Those modified SUVs were heavy, armor-plated beasts, likely pushing 500 horsepower with supercharged engines. They were hammers designed to smash anything on the road. Leo was driving a tin can with a loose timing belt. Okay, Leo whispered to the dashboard. Let's see what you've got. He pressed the accelerator floorward. The Charger hesitated, the transmission kicking down with a clunk, then surged forward. The speedometer climbed. The steering wheel began to shudder violently. The front right tire was unbalanced. If he pushed it too hard, the vibration would tear the wheel bearing apart. The phone in his pocket buzzed. He fished it out, keeping one eye on the road. Unknown number. He put it on speaker and wedged it into the cup holder. Vance. It was Sarah Thorne. Her voice was clipped, distorted by the storm. I've got company, Leo shouted over the roar of the wind rushing through the broken back window. Moretti. 3 vehicles. I'm on I-90 West, passing exit 14. We're 20 minutes out, Thorne said, her voice tight. The extraction team is chopper-bound, but the weather is grounding us. You have to get to the way station. It's the only defensible position. 20 minutes? Leo laughed, a dry, humorless bark. I've got maybe 3 minutes before they pit me. Leo, listen to me. Don't try to outrun them. You can't. You have to outdrive them. Use the road. I'm a mechanic, Sarah. I fix things. I don't race them. Then fix the situation. Thorn out. The line went dead. Leo looked in the mirror. The lead SUV was right on his bumper now. He could see the grille guard, a matte black steel battering ram. It filled his rear view, blocking out the world. The SUV didn't ram him immediately. It was toying with him. The vulture wanted him to panic. The SUV drifted to the left lane, pulling alongside. The window was tinted pitch black, but Leo felt the eyes. Then, the SUV swerved. It was a textbook pit maneuver attempt, precision immobilization technique. The SUV aimed to clip Leo's rear quarter panel, sending him into a spin that, at 100 miles per hour, would turn the Charger into a fireball. Leo didn't steer away. He did the opposite. Physics, he thought. Asterisk mass times acceleration. Just as the SUV lunged, Leo slammed on the brakes for a split second. The Charger dipped, the nose diving. The SUV, anticipating a lateral movement, missed the rear bumper and swerved into the empty space Leo had occupied a millisecond before. Leo released the brake and floored it again. The sudden deceleration and acceleration caused the Charger to fishtail, but he caught it, countersteering with a fluid motion. The SUV overcorrected, its heavy weight working against it. It wobbled, the suspension groaning, before the driver regained control. But Leo had gained 50 yards. Heavy center of gravity, Leo muttered, his mind dissecting the enemy vehicle. Active suspension, probably magnetic ride control, but that much armor adds 2,000 pounds. Inertia is my friend. The other two SUVs were closing in now, forming a flying V formation. They were going to box him in. One on the left, one on the right, the lead car taking the rear. A moving coffin. Ahead, the highway narrowed. Construction signs flashed orange in the rain. Asterisk road work ahead. Left lane closed. Leo saw his chance. Or his grave. The orange barrels approached rapidly, funneling the traffic into a single lane on the right. The SUV on his left accelerated, trying to cut in front of him before the merge, to brake check him into a stop. The SUV on the right stayed parallel, preventing him from changing lanes. Leo gripped the shifter. He needed torque, not speed. He dropped the transmission from drive to 3. The engine screamed, redlining. The SUV on the left was inches from his front fender, squeezing him. Leo looked at the construction zone. The closed lane wasn't empty. It was filled with milled pavement, rough, grooved asphalt, and heavy machinery parked for the night. A massive road grader sat dormant behind a line of concrete Jersey barriers. Leo made a choice that defied survival instinct but adhered perfectly to mechanical logic. He feigned a swerve to the right, toward the open lane. The right-hand SUV adjusted to block him. Then, Leo yanked the wheel hard left. He smashed through the orange plastic barrels, debris exploding over the hood. He was in the closed lane now, tires roaring on the milled pavement. The surface was uneven, shaking the Charger like a rag doll. The left-hand SUV, caught off guard, tried to follow. But the driver hesitated. Leo aimed for the gap between the concrete barrier and the parked road grader. It was narrow, maybe 8 feet wide. The Charger was 6 feet wide. He threaded the needle at 90 miles per hour. Sparks showered the sides of the car as the mirrors were sheared off by the concrete on one side and the steel blade of the grader on the other. The sound was a deafening screech of metal on metal, a high-pitched wail that vibrated in Leo's teeth. The SUV behind him wasn't so lucky. The driver, blinded by the rain and Leo's spray, tried to follow the line, but the SUV was too wide. Leo watched in the rearview mirror, now hanging by a wire, as the SUV clipped the edge of the road grader's massive steel blade. The impact was catastrophic. The front right corner of the SUV disintegrated. The axle snapped. The massive vehicle vaulted into the air, flipping end over end, a tumbling brick of black steel. It crashed down onto the active lane, rolling and sparking, effectively creating a burning roadblock for the other two pursuers. Leo exhaled, a sound that was half sob, half laugh. He was through the construction zone. The road widened again. but the car was dying. The temperature gauge was pegged in the red. The impact or the stress had blown a radiator hose. Steam was billowing from the hood, mixing with the rain. The engine was knocking. A heavy, metallic thunk-thunk-thunk. Rod knock. The oil was cooking. "Come on," Leo pleaded, patting the dashboard. "Just 5 more miles. Stay with me." He could see the lights of the other 2 SUVs in the distance behind him. They had navigated around the wreck and were coming back with a vengeance. They wouldn't try to box him in this time. They would just shoot. A bullet shattered the side mirror housing. Then another punched a hole through the trunk lid, whistling past his ear and embedding itself in the dashboard. Leo ducked low. He needed a weapon. He didn't have a gun. He had a socket set, a tire iron, and a dying car. He looked ahead. The way station sign appeared in the gloom. *1 mile. It was dark, abandoned, a ghost structure of concrete and rusted scales. Leo knew he couldn't stop. If he stopped, he was dead. He had to turn the car itself into the final trap. He saw the exit ramp for the way station. He took it fast, too fast. The Charger groaned, the tires losing grip. He slid sideways into the way station lot, mud spraying. He aimed the car at the main scale house, a small brick building in the center of the lot. Behind him, the 2 SUVs roared down the ramp, their high beams blinding. Leo unbuckled his seatbelt. He reached into his bag and pulled out the tire iron. He wedged it against the gas pedal, pinning it to the floor. The engine was screaming now, a dying wail of tortured metal. Leo grabbed the door handle. Timing, he thought. It's all about timing. He steered the car toward the gap between 2 parked, derelict trailers near the scale house. Then, he yanked the wheel to lock the steering, popped the door, and rolled. The asphalt was unforgiving. Leo hit the ground at 40 miles per hour. He tucked his chin, protecting his head, tumbling, scraping skin, bruising bone. The world spun in a kaleidoscope of wet pavement and pain. He came to a stop against a concrete planter, gasping for air. The Charger, driverless and throttled up, rocketed forward. The lead SUV, seeing the car accelerate, chased it. The driver assumed Leo was still inside, making a last-ditch run. The Charger hit the ramp of the vehicle scale. It launched. It wasn't a clean jump. The car clipped the top of the scale house, flipping into the air, a 2-ton projectile of gasoline and hot metal. It crashed down directly onto the path of the pursuing SUVs. The lead SUV slammed on its brakes, but on the wet, muddy surface of the way station, physics took the wheel. It slid, helpless, into the wreckage of the Charger. The collision was thunderous. The Charger's gas tank, ruptured by the impact, ignited. A fireball bloomed, turning the night into day. Orange and black smoke billowed up, momentarily obscuring everything. Leo lay in the shadow of the planter, his body screaming in protest. He watched through the rain. The second SUV had stopped just short of the inferno. Doors opened. 4 men got out, silhouettes against the fire. They moved with military precision, scanning the area with weapon-mounted lights. Leo checked his position. He was exposed. He had no cover to retreat to. Then, a sound cut through the crackle of the fire. *thwop thwop thwop. Rotor blades. A floodlight from the sky washed over the scene, blindingly white. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." The voice boomed from a loudspeaker overhead. An FBI tactical helicopter hovered low, the downdraft fanning the flames of the burning cars. The men from the SUV didn't drop their weapons. They raised them toward the chopper. Muzzle flashes sparkled like fireflies. The helicopter returned fire. A minigun mounted on the skid roared, a sound like canvas tearing. The ground around the SUV erupted in geysers of dirt and asphalt. The men scattered, diving for cover behind their armored vehicle. Leo used the chaos. He dragged himself up, limping heavily on his left leg. He moved into the darkness, away from the fire, away from the fight. He headed toward the tree line bordering the interstate. He found a drainage culvert and slid inside, out of the line of fire. He collapsed against the cold concrete, his chest heaving. He pulled the phone from his pocket. The screen was cracked, but it was still connected. "Sarah," he rasped. "We see you, Leo." Thorne's voice came through, calm now. "Thermal imaging has you in the culvert. Stay down. Ground team is moving in to secure the perimeter. Moretti's men are pinned." Leo closed his eyes. He could smell the burning rubber, the distinct, acrid scent of coolant and gasoline, the smell of a machine that had given its life. "The car?" Leo murmured, his mind drifting back to the garage, to the feeling of the wrench in his hand. The timing belt held. "What?" "Nothing," Leo said, watching the fire reflect off the wet walls of the culvert. "Just good mechanics." He waited in the dark, the sound of gunfire fading into the rhythmic beat of the rain, knowing that while he had won the sprint, the marathon was just beginning. The vulture was still out there, and now he would be angry. Leo Vance checked his watch.
2:14 AM.
4 chapters down, 2 to go, and the road only got harder from here. The adrenaline was beginning to ebb, leaving behind a cold, hollow ache in his joints. Leo shifted in the culvert, the icy water soaking through his jeans. He could hear the shouting of the FBI SWAT team as they moved in on the remaining Moretti mercenaries. Asterisk, hands. Let me see your hands. Asterisk, clear right, moving up. It was a symphony of controlled violence. A world Leo had tried to leave behind when he walked away from the service, when he picked up a wrench instead of a rifle. But the past, like a rusted bolt, had a way of stripping the threads and refusing to let go. He thought of the laptop in his bag. The upload was done. The evidence was out. Technically, his job was finished. He could walk out of this culvert, hands up, let Thorne put him in witness protection. A nice quiet life in Nebraska, fixing tractors. But he knew Vittorio Moretti. He knew the vulture didn't stop because of an indictment. The vulture stopped only when he was dead. Leo touched the bruise forming on his forehead. He looked at his hands, trembling again, but this time from the cold. "Thorne," he said into the phone. "I'm here, Leo."
Sidrep.
"Is Moretti in custody?" A pause. A silence that stretched too long. "Negative," Thorne said, her voice dropping an octave. "The lead SUV, the one that crashed into the fire? It was a decoy, driver and a shooter. Moretti wasn't in the convoy." Leo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. "He was at the diner," Leo said. "I saw him. He must have switched vehicles," Thorne said. "Or he stayed back to coordinate." "Leo, we have the data. We have his men. We'll find him." Leo laughed softly, a dark sound in the tunnel. "You won't find him, Sarah. He's not running." "What do you mean?" He triangulated the upload. "He knows I have the source code. He knows that as long as I'm breathing, I can testify to what those numbers mean. He didn't send that convoy to stop the upload. He sent it to flush me out. Leo, stay put. My team is coming to get you." Leo stood up, wincing as weight hit his injured leg. He looked out at the flashing lights, the smoke, the converging forces of law and order. "If I get in that chopper, Sarah, I'm a sitting duck." He has eyes inside. You know he does. That's how he found the drop in Chapter 1. "Leo, don't do this. Don't go rogue." "I'm not going rogue," Leo said, stepping out of the other side of the culvert, into the deep woods that lined the highway. "I'm going to work. There's a rattle in the engine, Sarah. I have to find it."
Leo.
He hung up. He dropped the phone into the rushing water of the drainage stream. He turned his collar up against the rain and began to walk into the black timber of the South Dakota night. He needed a new car. He needed tools. And he needed to hunt the vulture before the vulture hunted him. The silent route was the only way left. The world had reduced itself to a single, high-pitched frequency, a tinnitus scream that drowned out the hiss of steam and the groan of dying metal. Leo Vance hung suspended in the webbing of his seatbelt, the world inverted. Gravity pulled at the blood pooling in his head, making his vision throb in violent, red-tinted pulses. The smell was the first thing to cut through the concussion. The acrid, chemical bite of deployed airbags, the copper tang of his own blood, and the unmistakable sweet sickness of leaking gasoline. He blinked, his eyelashes sticky. Through the spiderwebbed windshield of the overturned sedan, he saw only the desolate texture of wet concrete and the skeletal legs of a rusted gantry crane. He wasn't on I-90 anymore. The chase had bled off the highway, careening down an unmarked service ramp and into the throat of the forgotten industrial district that lined the outer rim of the city. Leo fumbled for the buckle. His fingers felt like swollen sausages, disconnected from his brain's command. Asterisk click. He dropped. The impact against the roof, now the floor, of the car forced a jagged cry from his throat. His ribs felt like a cage made of glass, shattered and grinding. He dragged himself through the shattered driver's side window, glass shards biting into his palms, and tumbled out onto the oil-slicked asphalt. The rain here was different than on the highway. It was heavier, mixed with the soot of a century of steel production, falling in gray sheets that obscured the horizon. Leo tried to stand, but his legs were water. He collapsed against the rear tire of his wrecked vehicle, gasping for air that felt too thick to breathe. He looked back at the road he had come down. 200 yards away, through the veil of rain, twin beams of xenon light cut through the darkness like searchlights from a prison tower. They were motionless, watching. Then, the heavy thud-thud of car doors slamming. They were here. Flashback. 3 hours ago, the motel room, I-90 West. Asterisk, the laptop screen cast a ghostly blue pallor over Leo's sweating face. The upload bar on the encrypted server was mocking him. It had been stuck there for 40 seconds. Asterisk, come on, Leo whispered, his hands trembling as he hovered over the keyboard. Don't die on me now. Asterisk, he wasn't just uploading the ledger. He was activating the failsafe. In the shadowy world of data couriers, they called it the Canary. It was a passive GPS beacon buried in the metadata of the transfer. Usually, you sent the data to the buyer, but Leo had broken the cardinal rule. He wasn't sending it to a buyer. Asterisk, he was sending it to the federal building in Manhattan. Specifically, to a secure Dropbox labeled only with a routing number he had memorized 4 years ago during a drunken night with a disgraced NSA contractor. Asterisk routing number, TR-77 Sigma. Asterisk agent Sarah Thorne. Asterisk Leo had never met her, but every courier knew the legend. She was the head of the Bureau's organized crime task force, a woman who treated the law not as a shield, but as a hammer. If you pinged Thorne, you weren't asking for a rescue, you were designating a target. Asterisk, the screen flashed green. Upload complete. Protocol 0 active. Asterisk Leo had typed in the final command line. Trigger _event. Biometric _cessation. Asterisk if his heart rate monitor, linked via his smartwatch to the encrypted app, stopped, or if he manually punched in the panic code, the GPS coordinates wouldn't just be sent. They would be broadcast as an officer down emergency on federal frequencies. Asterisk he had hesitated then, his finger hovering over the enter key. Once he did this, there was no going back to the anonymous life. He would be a witness, target, a ghost in the system exposed to the light. Asterisk he hit enter. The present, the memory dissolved into the pain in his side. Leo forced himself up. He couldn't stay by the car. The wreck was a coffin waiting to be nailed shut. He limped toward the looming silhouette of a derelict factory, a cathedral of corrugated iron and broken glass. It was a labyrinth of shadows, a place where the city dumped its nightmares. He moved through a gap in the chain-link fence, the metal tearing at his jacket, and stumbled into the cavernous interior of the warehouse. Inside, the sound of the rain was amplified, drumming against the metal roof like 1,000 nervous fingers. Pigeons, disturbed by his intrusion, fluttered in the rafters, their wings beating a frantic rhythm. Leo pressed his back against a cold, rusted pillar. He checked his watch. The screen was cracked, but the signal was pulsing. Asterisk transmitting. Come on, Thorne, he rasped, checking the magazine of his subcompact pistol. 3 rounds. 3 rounds against the entire Moretti crime syndicate. Outside, the crunch of boots on gravel announced their arrival. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to. They knew he was hurt, They knew there was no exit. This was a hunt, and they were savoring the flush.
Leo.
The voice drifted through the warehouse, smooth and terrifyingly calm. It wasn't Vittorio. Vittorio Moretti sat in penthouse suites. He didn't walk through mud. This was Marco, the vulture's talons. Leo, be reasonable, Marco called out. His voice echoed, bouncing off the steel beams, making it impossible to pinpoint his location. The car is totaled. Your leg is dragging. I can hear you breathing from here. Leo held his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He moved deeper into the shadows, weaving through the skeletons of heavy machinery. Lathes, presses, conveyor belts that hadn't moved since the 80s. You have something that belongs to Mr. Moretti, Marco continued, his voice drawing closer. A little hard drive, a digital key. Give it to me and we make this quick. A bullet to the back of the head. You won't feel a thing. You just switch off. Leo gritted his teeth. He reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing the cold aluminum of the drive. Contained everything. The offshore accounts, the judges on the payroll, the location of the bodies buried in the foundations of the new stadium. It was the death warrant of the 5 families. He wasn't going to give it up. He was going to die with it. A shadow detached itself from the darkness to his left. Leo spun, raising the pistol, but he was too slow. A boot lashed out, catching him squarely in the injured ribs. The pain was blinding, a white-hot supernova that erased his vision. The gun clattered away across the concrete floor. Leo crumpled, gasping, curling into a fetal ball. Marco stepped into the dim light filtering through the skylights. He was a giant of a man, dressed in an immaculate charcoal trench coat that seemed to repel the filth of the warehouse. He held a suppressed SIG sour in one hand, pointed casually at the ground.
Disappointing, Marco Said.
He holstered his weapon and reached down, grabbing Leo by the collar of his jacket. With effortless strength, he hauled Leo to his feet and slammed him against a concrete pillar. Marco's other hand patted Leo down, swift and professional. He found the drive in seconds. He held it up to the light, inspecting it like a jeweler appraising a diamond. Vittorio will be pleased, Marco said. He pulled a phone from his pocket, dialed a number, and put it on speaker. Do you have it? The voice on the other end was raspy, aged like spoiled wine.
Vittorio Moretti.
The vulture. I have it, sir, Marco said. And the courier? Put him on. Marco shoved the phone against Leo's bloody cheek.
Leo Vittorio Krund.
You were the best driver we had. Quiet, efficient. What happened? Did you grow a conscience? Or just greed? Leo spat blood onto the floor. I saw what you did to the girl in Yonkers, he wheezed. She was 16, Vittorio. There was a silence on the line, heavy and cold. Business is business, Leo. And now your business is concluded.
Marco?
Yes, sir. Leave him there. Let the rats have him. But make sure he can't crawl away first. Marco pocketed the phone and the drive. He looked at Leo with eyes devoid of humanity. Nothing personal, Leo. You know the rules. Marco raised his pistol, aiming not at Leo's head, but at his kneecap. He was going to maim him first, leave him to bleed out slowly in the dark. Leo closed his eyes. He thought of the open road, the silence of the highway at 3 a.m., the freedom he had traded for this moment of defiance. Asterisk beep. The sound didn't come from Marco's phone, came from Leo's wrist. Marco frowned, glancing down at Leo's watch. What is that? Leo opened his eyes. A grim, bloody smile split his face. That, he whispered, is the cavalry. Crash. The world turned white. The skylights above them exploded inward. Not just broken, vaporized. Canisters of magnesium and ammonium perchlorate. Flashbangs. Dropped from the shattered roof like falling stars. Bang, bang, bang. The concussive force hit them like a physical blow. The light was brighter than the sun, searing the retinas, turning the warehouse into a landscape of blinding white exposure. The sound was a deafening thunderclap that scrambled the inner ear, erasing balance and orientation. Marco staggered back, roaring in confusion, his hands flying to his face. The gun in his hand fired wildly, a bullet sparking harmlessly off the steel pillar inches above Leo's head. And then the sound of the breach. It wasn't a chaotic rush. It was the terrifying, rhythmic precision of a Tier 1 asset. FBI. Down. Get down. The voices came from everywhere at once. The main bay doors at the south end of the factory disintegrated under the force of a battering ram attached to a Bearcat armored vehicle. The machine roared into the warehouse, its floodlights cutting through the smoke and dust like divine judgment. From the shattered windows, laser sights, dozens of them, sliced through the haze, painting the room in a grid of red lines. Marco, blinded and disoriented, tried to raise his weapon toward the vehicle. Thwip. A single shot, controlled, precise. It didn't kill him, took his hand. The round from a sniper positioned on the adjacent rooftop passed through Marco's wrist, vaporizing bone and tendon. The gun and the hand holding it ceased to be a threat. Marco screamed, a high, thin sound that was immediately swallowed by the roar of the tactical team. Figures clad in olive-drab tactical gear, faces obscured by gas masks and ballistic helmets, flowed into the room like water. They moved in perfect synchronization, checking corners, clearing sectors. Subject secure. Blue team cover left flank. Red team on me. A figure separated from the stack and sprinted toward Leo. Even through the tactical gear, the heavy vest, the helmet, the assault rifle slung across the chest, Leo recognized the movement.
Urgent.
Direct. The figure skidded to a halt beside him, dropping to one knee. A gloved hand reached out, checking his pulse, tilting his head back to check his pupils. Vance? A female voice crackled through the comm speaker on her shoulder. Leo Vance. Can you hear me? Leo blinked, his vision swimming. Thorne? Agent Sarah Thorne ripped off her gas mask, revealing a face that was sharp, fierce, and currently smeared with grease. Her eyes were hard flint, scanning him for critical injuries. I told you the drop was compromised, she said, her voice tight. You took the scenic route. I brought you a present? Leo gasped, nodding weakly toward Marco, who was currently being zip-tied by 3 agents, his screams reduced to whimpers. Pocket. His coat. Thorne turned, barking an order to her team. Secure the evidence. Left pocket. Now. An agent retrieved the hard drive, holding it up. Thorne nodded, a look of grim satisfaction crossing her face. She keyed her radio. Command, this is Thorne. Objective secure. The package is intact. I repeat, the ledger is in custody. She looked back at Leo. You realize what you just did? You just lit a match in a powder keg. Did I get him? Leo asked, his consciousness fraying at the edges.
Vittorio?
Thorne looked around the warehouse. The air was filled with the shouts of agents, the static of radios, the hum of the armored vehicle. It was the sound of a dismantling. We traced the call, Thorne said, her hand resting on Leo's shoulder, grounding him. SWAT teams in Manhattan and Jersey just hit 4 locations simultaneously. We have the voice print. We have the ledger. Vittorio Moretti is done. The whole network is burning down tonight. Leo, because of you. Leo let his head fall back against the pillar. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the cold and the pain. But for the first time in days, the fear was gone. The constant looking in the rearview mirror was over. Agent Thorne. One of the medics rushed forward, carrying a trauma kit. Thorne stood up, making space for the medic, but she kept her eyes on Leo. The rain continued to pour through the shattered skylights, washing away the blood on the floor, mixing it with the oil and the dirt. Get him out of here, Thorne commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Category 1 transport. He's the most valuable witness in the country right now. Nobody touches him. As the medics lifted him onto the stretcher, Leo looked up at the ceiling. Through the hole where the flashbangs had entered, he could see the sky. The storm was breaking. The clouds were parting, revealing a single faint star. He felt the vibration of the stretcher wheels on the concrete. He saw Marco being dragged away, a broken man who had once been a monster. He saw the FBI agents forming a phalanx around him, a wall of Kevlar and resolve. Leo Vance closed his eyes. The silent rout was over. The breach was complete. "Rest now, Leo." Thorne's voice faded as the morphine took hold. "We've got the wheel." The darkness that took him then wasn't the terrifying black of the trunk or the shadow of the grave. It was warm. It was safe. It was the silence of a job finished. Epilogue of the scene, the command center. Outside the warehouse, the perimeter was a sea of flashing red and blue lights. The industrial district, usually a tomb at night, was alive with the machinery of justice. Sarah Thorne stood by the open doors of the Bearcat, watching the ambulance pull away, flanked by 4 black SUVs. She pulled a cigarette from a crushed pack in her vest, a habit she had quit 3 years ago and restarted 3 hours ago. She didn't light it. She just rolled it between her fingers. Her second-in-command, Agent Miller, walked up, his face pale. "Sarah," he said quietly, "we just cracked the first layer of the drive Leo gave us. And it's not just the Moretus," Miller said, looking around as if the darkness itself had ears. "There are names here, Sarah. Judges, senators, people in the bureau." Thorne froze. She looked at the retreating ambulance, carrying the man who had just handed them a nuclear bomb. "Of course there are," she whispered. She crushed the unlit cigarette in her hand. The vulture was just the middleman. She looked at Miller. "Lock it down. No digital copies. That drive goes into the Faraday cage in my office. If anyone asks, we're still decrypting." "What are we going to do?" Miller asked. Thorne looked at the wreckage of the industrial park, the smoke rising into the night air. "We finished the hunt," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Now we start the war." She turned back to the chaos. "Pack it up. We're moving out." The breach was over, but the fallout had just begun. The silence of the rout had been broken, and the noise was going to shake the foundations of the city. The silence in the room was not peaceful. It was heavy, pressurized, the kind of silence that exists at the bottom of the ocean where the light fails to reach. Leo Vance sat at a table made of pressed wood and laminate, the surface scarred by the nervous scratching of 1,000 fingernails that had preceded him. The room was a windowless box painted a hue of beige that seemed designed to drain the human spirit of vitality. Above, a fluorescent light fixture buzzed with the incessant, angry hum of a trapped insect, flickering every 14 seconds. Leo had counted. He had been counting everything for the last 6 hours to keep his mind from drifting back to the smell of burning rubber and the copper tang of blood. He looked at his hands. They were scrubbed clean of the engine grease and the road grit, but the grime felt tattooed into the whorls of his fingerprints. His knuckles were swollen, turning the color of an overripe plum, a souvenir from the struggle in the server room, the desperate, chaotic final moments of the breach. On the wall, mounted high in the corner inside a protective cage, a television droned on low volume. It was the only connection to the world outside this sterile purgatory. Leo watched the screen. The graphics were frantic, bold red banners scrolling across the bottom. Asterisk mass indictments. RICO charges. The Moretti syndicate dismantled. The camera cut to live footage from a rainy tarmac in New Jersey. A line of black SUVs sat with their lights flashing, painting the wet asphalt in strobing blues and reds. Men in windbreakers emblazoned with FBI and DEA were escorting a chain of handcuffed figures toward a waiting transport plane. And there he was, Vittorio the Vulture Moretti. On the screen, the man looked smaller than the legend that had haunted the interstate supply chains for decades. Without his bespoke suit, stripped of the dark lighting of his backroom offices, Moretti looked like a confused geriatric grandfather. His hair was windblown, thinning at the scalp. He wasn't snarling. He looked hollowed out. "Got you," Leo thought, but the victory tasted like ash. Asterisk I got you, and I lost myself. A flashback seized him, visceral and violent. He wasn't in the beige room anymore. He was back in the server farm in Ohio 12 hours ago. The air was freezing, supercooled for the machines. The hum wasn't a fluorescent light. It was the roar of cooling fans. He could feel the cold steel of the USB drive in his hand, the digital evidence he had carried across 3 state lines. He remembered the upload bar on the monitor creeping forward with agonizing slowness. The door behind him had splintered. He remembered the sound of the suppressed gunshot, a wet thwack against the server rack inches from his ear. He remembered hitting the enter key just as the glass shattered. The sensation of the floor rushing up to meet him, the shouting, the sudden, blinding flood of tactical lights as Agent Thorne's team breached the perimeter, not to kill him, but to salvage what was left of him. The buzz of the room light snapped him back. Leo blinked, his eyes dry and burning. The television showed the anchorwoman now, her face a mask of professional gravity, attributed to a massive leak of encrypted data, allegedly provided by an insider. Authorities are calling it the single most damaging blow to organized crime in the logistics sector in 50 years. The anonymous source remains unidentified.
Puta mzedz.
The door to the holding room opened with a pneumatic hiss. Agent Sarah Thorne stepped inside. She looked different than she had on the highway or in the chaotic flashes of the extraction. She was no longer wearing the tactical vest or the windbreaker. She wore a charcoal pantsuit that looked like it had been slept in. Her eyes were rimmed with red, dark circles carved deep beneath them. She carried 2 coffees in cardboard cups and a thick, manila envelope tucked under her arm. She kicked the door shut with her heel and set the coffees on the table. The steam rose in the cold air, smelling of burnt beans and chicory. "Black," she said, her voice raspy. "I figured you're done with sugar for a while." Leo didn't touch the cup. He just looked at her, then back at the TV where the footage of the Moretti arrests was looping. "Is it done?" Thorne pulled out the metal chair opposite him and sat down, the legs screeching against the linoleum. "It's done. The grand jury convened 2 hours ago. The digital dump from the drive gave us everything. Route maps, payroll for the dirty cops, the locations of the stash houses, and the kill orders. Vittorio isn't getting bail. He's going to die in a supermax." "And the rest of them?" Leo asked. "The network?" "Decapitated," Thorne said, taking a sip of her coffee and wincing at the heat. "We're sweeping up the lieutenants in Chicago and Detroit as we speak. The silent route is closed." Leo nodded slowly. He should have felt relief. He should have felt the adrenaline crash of a survivor. Instead, he felt a profound, echoing emptiness. The mission was the only thing that had propelled him forward for the last week. It was the fuel in his tank. Now, the tank was dry, and he was just a man sitting in a room that didn't exist on any map. "So," Leo said, his voice cracking, "what happens to the courier?" Thorne set her cup down. Her expression shifted, the professional mask slipping just enough to reveal a trace of genuine sorrow. She placed her hand on the thick manila envelope. "Leo Vance is dead," she said softly. The words hung in the air, final and absolute. "We found his truck abandoned off I-90, Thorne continued, reciting the narrative they had constructed. "Burned out. Looks like a cartel hit. Forensics will find teeth and bone fragments that match his dental records. Don't ask me where we got them, you don't want to know. As far as the world is concerned, the brave driver who stole the data didn't make it out." Leo looked down at his chest. He was still wearing his work shirt. The dark blue fabric was stiff with dried sweat. The embroidered patch over his heart read Vance, and below it, Vance Logistics. It was a small company, his father's company. He had spent 10 years building it, mile by mile, load by load. "And my house?" Leo asked. "My dad's old shop? Seized as a crime scene, then it will be foreclosed on," Thorne said. She didn't sugarcoat it. She knew he needed the truth. "You can't go back, Leo. Even with Vittorio inside, the cartel has long arms. There are cousins, nephews, rivals who would want to make a name for themselves by skinning the man who took down the vulture. If you walk out those doors as Leo Vance, you won't make it to the state line." She slid the envelope across the table. It made a dry, rasping sound against the laminate. "Open it." Leo reached out. His hand trembled slightly, a tremor of exhaustion rather than fear. He undid the string tie and opened the flap. Inside was a life, or rather, the paperwork of a life. He pulled out a driver's license first. It was an Ohio license, valid, issued 3 years ago. The photo was him, but subtly different, manipulated digitally to show him with glasses, hair parted on the other side. Asterisk name, Arthur Penhaligon. Asterisk asterisk DOB. October 12, 1982. Asterisk asterisk address. 404, Oak Street, Billings, Montana. Arthur, Leo said, testing the name, felt like a stone in his mouth. Heavy. Foreign. Who is Arthur? Arthur is a widower, Thorne explained, her voice dropping into a rhythmic, rehearsed cadence. He used to work as a mechanic for a municipal bus depot in Cleveland until his back gave out. He's moving west for the dry air. He's quiet. He pays his taxes on time. He has no social media presence, no living family, and a credit score of 720. Leo pulled out the rest of the contents. A birth certificate, a social security card, a debit card with $4,000 in the account, a lease agreement for a small apartment in Billings, and a plane ticket, asterisk Department of Defense charter. Destination, Billings, Montana, Montana. Leo whispered. Big sky, Thorne said. Lots of space. Not a lot of people. It's a good place to disappear. Leo looked at the photo on the license again. Arthur Penhaligon looked like a man who had given up. Maybe that was the point. I built that company, Leo said, his voice barely audible. He wasn't arguing, he was mourning. I knew every bolt in that truck. I knew every waitress at every diner between here and St. Louis. I know, Thorne said. She reached across the table, her fingers hovering near his wrist but not quite touching. You did a good thing, Leo. A great thing. You stopped a pipeline of fentanyl and weapons that was killing thousands of people. But heroism has a tax. This is the bill. She stood up and walked to a metal locker in the corner of the room. She opened it and pulled out a bundle of clothes. Generic clothes. Jeans from a department store, a gray hooded sweatshirt, a plain black t-shirt, heavy work boots that had been scuffed to look used. She placed them on the table. Shower is through that door. She pointed to a side exit. There's a trash chute inside. Anything you have on you, the uniform, the boots, the watch, even the underwear, it goes in the chute. It gets incinerated in the basement. Leo stood up. His legs felt stiff, his knees popping. He felt older than he had yesterday. He looked at the uniform shirt one last time. He traced the threading of his name patch. Leo Vance, he said. He was a good man, Thorne said, standing at attention. A salute of sorts to the civilian she had used as a weapon. Leo gathered the new clothes. He walked to the bathroom door. He paused, his hand on the handle. Does it ever go away? He asked, not looking back. The feeling of the crosshairs? Thorne hesitated. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the lights and the low murmur of the TV. No, she said honestly. But you learn to live in the blind spots. The bathroom was stark white, smelling of bleach and industrial soap. Leo stripped. He peeled the uniform off his body like a layer of dead skin. The shirt, heavy with the sweat of the chase, landed on the tiled floor with a wet slap. He looked at himself in the mirror. There were bruises on his ribs, yellow and purple maps of the impact from the steering wheel during the crash in Chapter 4. There was a cut on his cheekbone that had scabbed over. He looked wild. He turned on the shower. The water was scalding hot. He stood under it for a long time, scrubbing until his skin was raw, trying to wash away the memory of the road. He washed away the grease, the fear, the smell of the diesel. When he stepped out, he dried himself with a rough, thin towel. He dressed in the clothes Thorne had given him. The jeans were stiff. The gray hoodie was soft but felt anonymous. He put on the glasses provided in the pocket. He gathered his old clothes. He bundled them into a ball, the uniform, the boots that had pressed the accelerator to the floorboard, the belt his father had given him. He opened the metal hatch of the chute in the wall. He held the bundle for a second. It was everything he was. He let go. The clothes tumbled down into the darkness. A second later, he heard the distant whoosh of the incinerator engaging. Leo Vance was gone. Arthur Penhaligon opened the door and stepped back into the interrogation room. Thorne was waiting. She looked him up and down, assessing the transformation. She nodded, satisfied. "The transport is waiting out back," she said. "Black sedan, tinted windows. They'll take you to a private airfield. You'll be in Montana by sunrise." She handed him the manila envelope. He tucked it into the pocket of his hoodie. "Thank you, Agent Thorne," he said. The voice sounded different now, flatter. "Good luck, Arthur," she replied. She held the door open for him. Leo walked out into the hallway. It was a long corridor of polished concrete, lined with identical gray doors. He walked toward the exit sign at the far end, a glowing red beacon. He pushed through the heavy steel doors and stepped into the night. The air was cold, biting. It wasn't the humid air of the coast. It was the crisp, thin air of a new season. The safe house was located in an industrial park, surrounded by high fences and scrub pine. A black sedan idled at the curb, its exhaust plumbing white clouds into the darkness. A driver in a suit stood by the open rear door. Leo paused on the sidewalk. He looked up at the sky. The rain had stopped, and the clouds were breaking. He could see a few stars. He thought about the road, the I-90, the endless ribbon of asphalt that connected the country. He had spent his life navigating it, mastering it. Now he was just another passenger. He thought about the tape, the vulture, the chaos. Felt like a movie he had watched a long time ago. He walked to the car. The driver nodded, silent and professional. Leo slid into the back seat. The leather was cool. The door slammed shut, sealing him inside a bubble of silence. The car pulled away, tires crunching on the gravel before hitting the smooth pavement. Leo watched out the window as the safe house receded, shrinking until it was just a gray box in the rearview mirror. They turned onto the on-ramp, merging onto the highway. The rhythm of the road returned. Asterisk thump thump, thump thump, asterisk the tires over the expansion joints. He watched the headlights of the oncoming traffic. Streamers of light, people going home, people going to work, people living lives that had names and histories and futures. He touched the envelope in his pocket. Asterisk Arthur Penhaligon. He closed his eyes. The motion of the car was a cradle. He was a ghost in the system now. A glitch in the matrix. He was safe, but he was alone. The car sped up, blending into the flow of traffic. Just another set of taillights disappearing into the vast, dark expanse of the American night. The silent route was over. The long, lonely detour had just begun.